Hi, and welcome to Freedom Law Group. In this video, we'll be discussing our tax freedom package, which includes our 23-page Revocation of Election affidavit. The tax freedom package provides everything you'll need to stop federal income tax withholdings if you're an employee and to legally revoke your election as a statutory taxpayer. In short, you will no longer be required to file or pay federal income taxes, safely and in full compliance with the law. If you're self-employed or an independent contractor, imagine a life where you no longer need to track every business mile or sort through your expenses and receipts during tax season. Those days are over. And for business owners, you too can stop federal withholdings coming out of your paycheck and push all corporate profits into your personal paycheck, whether through draws, bonuses, or salaries, resulting in no corporate or personal tax liability. This process provides you with a truly tax-free financial framework, all while operating fully within the bounds of the law. Sound too good to be true? It's even better than that. Let's dive in. There is no law requiring American nationals, those born or naturalized in the 50 states of the Union, or to a parent who was, to file and pay a federal income tax, FIT. That's about 99% of all Americans. The entire federal income tax system is a game of semantic deceit, word art, and intentionally needless complexities. However, in order to pull you out of the system, we need to walk you through it so you fully understand what has happened to you and how you can safely and legally walk off the federal income tax plantation forever by following the law as outlined on the government's own legal official websites. In the first place, it's important to know that Congress passed its first federal income tax law in 1894. However, a mere 266 days later, the United States Supreme Court struck it down, ruling that direct taxes such as the federal income tax violated Article 1, Section 9, Clause 4 of the Constitution. By the way, that decision has never been overturned. Some argue that the 16th Amendment effectively overturned that Supreme Court decision, but that's not true. I encourage you to visit the Education tab of our website to watch our videos on the 16th Amendment and jurisdiction. Here's what we know for sure. Direct taxes like the federal income tax remain unconstitutional unless Americans volunteer to pay it, in which case it would be perfectly legal and constitutional. More on that later. This is a 1040 U.S. individual income tax return form, which many Americans fill out every year when they file their taxes. What most people don't know is that the 1040 form comes with an absurdly long 117-page instruction booklet. On page 8 of the current booklet, it says, "These rules apply to all U.S. citizens, regardless of where they live, and resident aliens." But here's the dirty little secret the IRS doesn't want you to know. Anytime you see the terms U.S. or United States, or even the term state in the context of federal income taxes, the statutory or legal definition of each term is the District of Columbia. Yes, it's true that all U.S. citizens are subject to tax laws and the Internal Revenue Code, but the legal definition of U.S. is the District of Columbia, which means those living and working outside of the District of Columbia and its federal zones and territories have never been legally obligated to file or pay federal income taxes. Let me show it to you in the law. This is uscode.house.gov, the government's own official legal website. This is where all federal laws are codified. There are 54 titles of federal law. Title 26 is where the Internal Revenue Code, the tax laws, is found. Here, in Title 26, Section 7701, we find the definition section. Rather than using the standard and ordinary definitions of everyday terms like state and United States, Congress opted to include special definitions in the law. This is the statutory definition of United States as found in Section 7701. The term United States, when used in a geographical sense, includes only the states and the District of Columbia. One would reasonably assume that the term state means the 50 states of the Union. But that's not how it's defined in tax law. Let's look at it. The term state shall be construed to include the District of Columbia. It only includes the District of Columbia, which isn't even a state. Nowhere does it include anything else. For example, do you see California, Texas, Florida, Colorado, Utah, or Arizona listed here? Is there any mention of the 50 states of the Union? No, there's not. This clarifies that the statutory definition of state in the federal income tax laws includes only the District of Columbia, which means the statutory definition of the United States includes only the states, which means the District of Columbia and the District of Columbia. Even though you just saw it in the law, let's go deeper. This is a U.S. Supreme Court decision from Stenberg v. Carhart from the year 2000. It says, when a statute includes an explicit definition, we must follow that definition, even if it varies from that term's ordinary meaning. On the next line, it says, it is axiomatic, or in other words, obvious or self-evident, that the statutory definition of a term excludes unstated meanings of that term. And skipping down to the next line, as a rule, a definition which declares what a term means excludes any meaning that is not stated. So, when we go back to the statutory definition of state in Section 7701 and look at it, alongside the Supreme Court decision, which says, as a rule, a definition that declares what a term means excludes any meaning that is not stated, it becomes very obvious that the term state only includes the District of Columbia. According to the Supreme Court, any meaning of a word not included in the statutory definition is specifically and legally excluded from that definition, which means the 50 states of the Union are specifically and legally excluded from the statutory definition of state. This clarifies that the statutory definition of the United States in Section 7701 is the District of Columbia and the District of Columbia. Now, realizing a skeptic or two may be watching this video and still can't see it, let me show you the smoking gun. Let's return to Title 26 of the Internal Revenue Code, but this time, let's look at the special definition for the United States in subsection 4612 relating to taxes on petroleum. Are you ready for the smoking gun? Here it is. The term United States means the 50 states, the District of Columbia, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, any possession of the United States, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, and the Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands. Do you see it? In case you don't, let's look at both of these definitions at the same time so no one misses it. Look at those two vastly different definitions of the United States. The one on top is for who has to pay federal income taxes, and the one on the bottom is for who has to pay taxes on petroleum. Only those in the District of Columbia are legally obligated to pay a federal income tax, and pretty much all Americans are required to pay a petroleum tax if and when they decide to purchase petroleum or gas, etc. Do you see it? It really can't be made any more obvious. But this leaves us with a couple of important questions. First, why would the government use a definition of the United States that only includes the District of Columbia for income taxes, but use a broader definition for petroleum taxes? Here's why. The government knows that direct taxes, like the federal income tax, violate the Constitution unless they are voluntarily agreed to. To comply with the Constitution, Congress implemented income tax laws only in federal territories outside the constitutional 50 states, and called it the United States to trick all Americans to volunteer to be statutory taxpayers when before they were not. The legal or statutory definition of taxpayer references any person subject to the Internal Revenue Code, IRC. In the first place, American nationals are not statutory persons. The statutory definition of person only references legal fictions, like a corporation or a trust, not natural persons or human beings. The United States Supreme Court decision in United States v. Cooper Corporation from 1941 states in part that the term person does not include the sovereign, and that statutes not employing the phrase are ordinarily construed to exclude it, meaning excludes the sovereign, we the people, the creators of government. American nationals were never subject to the IRC, so they were not statutory taxpayers until they signed their first 1040 and elected to become one. Again, that's how they enslaved a nation. And they didn't force you. No one put a gun to your head. No one made you file a 1040 form. You volunteered, and by signing the form under penalty of perjury, you legally agreed to be treated as a statutory taxpayer. Do you get it now? Before you signed that 1040 form, you were protected by the Constitution. You had no legal, moral, or ethical obligation to file or pay federal income taxes. Once you signed, however, you elected to become a statutory taxpayer. Knowing millions of Americans would make this election by mistake due to semantic deceit employed in the tax code, Congress had to offer a remedy for those who might stumble upon the truth, like you have today. Congress codified a lawful process for revoking your election to be a taxpayer, and it can be found in 26 U.S.C. subsection 6-13 G4. In this subsection, we find a process for non-resident aliens to revoke a previous election by sending a statement to the Secretary of the Treasury. Realizing this is the first time we've used this term, non-resident alien in this video, let's define it. A non-resident alien is any individual who is not a resident alien and is not a citizen of the United States. What is the special legal definition of the United States in 26 U.S.C. subsection 7701? Do you remember? The District of Columbia. So legally, according to the tax code, those born or naturalized in the 50 states of the Union or who were born to a parent who was are non-resident aliens. How does that make you feel? Pretty wild, right? So yes, 26 U.S.C. subsection 6013 G4 shows us that a non-resident alien, that's 98 to 99% of all Americans, can revoke the election they made to be a taxpayer. And this is the process that we at Freedom Law Group specialize in. Through the Revocation of Election process, Americans can legally and officially exit the statutory taxpayer system, reclaiming their constitutional protections against direct taxes such as the federal income tax. This process is grounded in federal statutes, offering a clear and legitimate path for those who wish to correct their mistake. When you revoke your election, you legally end the presumption that you are a statutory taxpayer. You revoke the election you made to become a taxpayer, and you end the automatic renewal of your election to be taxed under federal income tax law. Our flagship product at Freedom Law Group is our Tax Freedom Package, which includes our 23-page Revocation of Election that you will send to the Secretary of the Treasury and to the IRS. Once you've completed this process, you will never be required to file or pay a federal income tax again, and you'll never have to fearfully look over your shoulder to see if your IRS slave master is coming after you. They can't. Once you revoke your election to be a taxpayer, you are no longer in the jurisdiction of the IRS, which can only operate in the statutory United States, which is the District of Columbia, and in the lives of those who volunteer to join the jurisdiction of the statutory United States, the District of Columbia, by filing a 1040 form. Once you revoke your election, the IRS is by law unable to pursue you starting with the tax year of your revocation and all future years. Your revocation is legal, it's lawful, and it's permanent. So now that we've walked you through it all, let's pull you out of the federal income tax system safely and legally forever. Here's how it works. Our tax freedom package is only $997. This is less than what the average American pays in federal income taxes every 2 months. After you complete this process, whatever money you've been sending to the government every year for federal taxes is going to stay in your paycheck and land in your bank account. And come April 15th, you can go have a steak dinner instead of stressing to meet the tax day deadline, because as a legal non-taxpayer, you'll no longer have to file. Within 24 hours of your enrollment, we will send your tax freedom package to you via email. Here's what it will include. Your personalized 23-page revocation of election, instructions for how to mail your revocation of election, the proper tax documents to provide your employer or payroll to stop all future federal income tax withholdings, and finally, instructions for submitting these tax forms to your employer. And realizing that you'll have questions along the way, we offer you 90 days of world-class email support. If you're ready to safely and legally walk off the federal income tax plantation for life, click Enroll now below this video and let us help you enjoy the life our founders intended for you. We hope you enjoyed this video, and we look forward to serving you.